Recently, I made a video on the Randle Cycle explaining why mixing sugar with fat with rest creates a metabolic traffic jam. In response, a creator named Resident Raw came into my comment section and left a snarky response. So I checked out his channel. He even made a 30-minute video trying to debunk the Randle Cycle and saying that it was irrelevant.
And today, I'm going to be telling you why the Randle Cycle is completely irrelevant. So the Randle Cycle has to be the most annoying buzzword.
So I watched his video. I wanted to see the counter arguments, but instead of scientific literature, what I found was arguably the most biological, illiterate, unhinged nutritional advice I have ever seen on this platform. Today we're going to break down why this advice that he's given is an absolute metabolic disaster. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's start with his fundamental understanding of macronutrients. Listen to what he says happens when you eat raw honey.
Honey, you should not view as a carbohydrate source. In truly unheated honey, 90% of the sugars are converted into enzymes inside of your body.
Sugars are carbohydrates. They're made of hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. Proteins, on the other hand, are enzymes which require nitrogen and certain amino acid chains. Claiming your body takes 90% of this carbohydrates and turns it into an enzyme is never going to happen. You might get trace enzymes, but you're not going to get 90% of it converting into enzymes to sugar. Raw honey contains trace enzymes from the bees, like 1 to 2%. But fructose and glucose aren't magically out of thin air going to make nitrogen to build complex protein structures. That's not going to happen. It metabolizes them as sugar. If you don't know the difference between containing a trace enzyme and transmuting a macronutrient, then you shouldn't be giving metabolic advice.
Bart K is a 50-year-old bald man who has thinning eyebrows, and he talks like a woman going through menopause.
You see, when you don't know the biochemistry, then you attack the biochemist. That's what he's basically doing here. Throwing ad hominem attacks at Bart because he doesn't understand the biochemistry.
When you factor in the fact that Bart K is always pissy and talks like a woman going through menopause, his eyebrows are thinning, he's bald, you can see the guy clearly isn't healthy. Not to mention the fact that he does kind of look rough for 50 years old.
But it gets even worse. He thinks that the Randle Cycle is just about body fat. He doesn't understand the Randle Cycle at all.
When glycogen stores are full, the body will turn that glucose into fat and store it as fat. And then on the opposite spectrum, when you are running primarily on carbohydrates and you consume fat, the body will not burn that fat and will instead store it as body fat. That's literally all the Randle Cycle says, because it does not prove that mixing carbohydrates and fat is bad in any way whatsoever, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting on body fat. In fact, everyone today should put on as much body fat as is reasonable.
Putting aside the completely unsubstantiated claim about autism, telling your audience to actively accumulate mass just to store heavy metals is malpractice.
The body stores toxins in its fat. If you are very skinny, you don't have much body fat, and you consume toxins, let's just say hypothetically, it's not like this happens all the time, especially to children. Let's say you're injected with some toxins, some mercury, some aluminum. I think you guys know what I'm referring to. If you have no body fat to store these toxins in, where do you think they go? They go straight to your brain and bone marrow. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in my personal experience, I've noticed that a lot of people with autism tend to be very skinny.
Constantly force your body to accumulate mass puts you in an anabolic state. There are no animals in nature that are in a chronic anabolic state. Anabolism is growth. Look, you can't be in a chronic state of growth without severe consequences. When your body is constantly in an anabolic state, it completely shuts down autophagy. Autophagy is your cellular housekeeping. It's how your body clears out dead, damaged cells. By following his advice, you're basically causing cellular aging, and driving metabolic dysfunction.
Human breast milk contains more carbohydrates than it does fat. However, the amount of energy that babies derive from fat and carbohydrates in the breast milk is extremely similar, but they do burn fat slightly more than they do the carbohydrates. Babies typically utilize about 55 to 60% of fat as energy and the rest as carbohydrates when it comes to breast milk. Human breast milk is the healthiest thing you could possibly give to a child.
His ultimate justification for why adults should have body fat is just as baffling. He asks in the video, why else will babies get fat other than being fat is good for you?
But why else would babies get fat other than being fat is good for you?
Well, a baby's brain grows double in size in the first year and requires extra fuel reserves for that specific reason, and they're born with high amounts of brown adipose tissue. So taking the biological necessity for a baby to grow as a reason why an adult should drink milk is a bit ridiculous. Infants must be in a constant anabolic state to build a skeletal and a nervous system, so they have to build that from scratch, whereas adults doing that just forces them to be sick. Okay, if you're going to do it when you're an adult, a fully grown adult. He thinks it's just about waistlines. It's not. It's about intracellular cross inhibition.
The main thing they like to say is if you mix carbohydrates and fats, you'll get fat. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting on body fat.
Ultimately, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, and you can make all the glucose you need endogenously through gluconeogenesis, and you don't want to be mixing these two substrates. The Randle cycle, aka the glucose fatty acid cycle, is not a true cycle, because it's not a true closed loop cycle, such as like the Krebs cycle and the Cori cycle. They're true cycles. In the Krebs cycle and the Cori cycle, the starting molecule is regenerated at the end. But with the Randle cycle, it's not. It's a reciprocal feedback mechanism, okay? When you dump high amounts of fat with sugar at the same time, like eating an apple smeared in equal parts butter, which he literally recommends.
If you're going to eat an apple, for example, have equal parts of butter with it.
This creates a metabolic traffic jam. A cell can't process both at the same time without a massive energy demand, like a high intensity workout. So if you did a high intensity workout, that triggers AMPK. When you force this collision at a resting state, you don't just get fat, you drive a massive metabolic mitochondrial oxidative stress. This is what leads to insulin resistance at the cellular level long before it shows up on the weighing scales. If you want more content like this, then make sure to like the video and subscribe. And if you want me to debunk any more nutritional lies, then leave it in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video.